Say hello to my guest, Howard Levin, here at LSI 2022, representing Deerfield Catalyst. Howard, thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
Howard, the panel that you were on here at LSI set up a little bit of the range of different kinds of incubators. Maybe it's one that's more academic, maybe it's more from a strategic. Tell us more about how that discussion went.
Yeah, actually, it was very interesting. Andrew Cleland is running the Fogarty Institute incubator, and they have a very interesting model. They have a lot of educational aspects. It's not just, bringing in companies and having them develop devices and then spitting them out. They really have an large educational component to it. We're a little different. We also believe that the medical device ecosystem needs to be advanced. We believe in training the next generation of medtech entrepreneurs. We're a little bit different in that our goal is to provide good Series A, well-vetted Series A companies to either Deerfield primarily or to other VCs if Deerfield's not interested.
Well, that sounds like a great way to look at it. Who better to do the diligence and sort of give the adult supervision to the companies than the investors that are going to be journeying with them?
Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting opportunity. We look at investments the same way that the VCs look at them, interestingly. As we spoke about at the panel, 10, 15 years ago, if you had 3 pigs, a provisional patent, and something you could throw on the table, you could get good Series A funding. But things are more like they were Series B back then is now Series A. So there's a lot more diligence and stuff. And we take that same approach that the VCs take.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm shocked now at how sort of the questioning and the rigor that a lot of these young companies are exposed to when, if you look back in I've been around the Stanford biodesign ecosystem
Right.
for most of its, entirety, even before they had the sense to call it something as catchy as biodesign. But you remember, you're right. You've got an idea. Here's $1 million, go work it out, go de-risk it. It was
Exactly.
really, and not to say that they were throwing the money away, but they were much more tolerant of the processes. And that's really what gave birth to biodesign was engineers talking to doctors about shiny objects. We don't need so much of that. Get the business plan. Think about how you're going to get to market. All of those things at the back end, nobody thought about. I don't think people get funded today if they can't talk about it.
Oh, and you're absolutely right. It's and biodesign framework's a great way of looking at it. And so we evaluate anything the same way a VC evaluates it. Whether it's unmet clinical need, which everybody knows, but then looking more at things like what is your clinical trial plan? How long will it take you to run the trial? How bad is your recruitment going to be because your inclusion exclusion? Reimbursement. Nobody thought about reimbursement before. It was like, I remember sitting in a meeting and I was talking to VCs about, we're worried about reimbursement. They said, what are you worried about reimbursement for? Times have changed so much. I guess I had an interesting story on the panel that was only mildly embarrassing to myself, but I used it because it really said what the difference between entrepreneurs were 15 years ago and what entrepreneurs are today. It was my first company and that we were running, and we had got the exact $1 million Series A you were talking about, and everything went well. And then we were doing Series B, so it was somewhat more stringent rules. And they asked, what is your distribution plan? And I was thinking, I said, FedEx. And they looked at me, stood up, and walked out. So that was my first foray into trying to understand that you really, as an entrepreneur in today's world, need to understand what the VCs want and even what the strategics want in order to do it. Being at a meeting like this at LSI is a great way to do it because you get exposed to the VCs. You get exposed to the entrepreneurs. There were plenty of people in the audience yesterday who were related to the VCs that were the strategics that were on stage with us, or that related to VCs we know. So I think, it's important to have meetings like this because it really allows everybody to get together, meet, talk, etc.
I think one of the things that hit me several years ago, just a bunch of friends and talking to the reimbursement people. Who talked to reimbursement people?
Nobody
And
touched reimbursement.
and I had to ask her like twice, like, you're pulling my leg. CEO blazing down the trail, all guns going, and FDA, 510K, balloon goes up, comes in and says, I'm ready to sell. Great. What's your CRP code? Blank stare. What are you talking? No. I'm through FDA. I can start to sell. And now it's like, now's not the time to start looking at what's your reimbursement code. So at Deerfield, are you there to help the entrepreneurs begin to understand sort of end to end in the journey so they can really begin to think more clearly about these things that we stumbled over or
Exactly.
didn't even know there was a stone in the road? But how do you help them with that?
Well, as opposed to like the Fogarty Institute, where they actually have like a formal training program and stuff like that, which is really great. We do more like on-the-job training in a sense. But we make people go through all of these different issues, from that we talked about already, the clinical, regulatory, reimbursement, engineering, etc., and make them work through these things. But the key is working together. I think really is a great training experience for them, and having them, make the mistakes. And having a little bit of backup, on the early stage side is helpful. Because, without those new people, we're going to go nowhere.
That's right. That's right. I think another challenge that I've been paying attention to is the rise of the translational scientist. So as you look at any cancer condition now, it's not you have your oncologist, there may be 3 or 4 other specialists. And then beyond that, who's designing the therapy? Now you've got a whole range of scientific skills. That's a very complex team that just like, and I think that's what I love most about my time with biodesign is we couldn't get the 3-legged stool to work. Just getting those 3 disciplines will now splinter the engineering, make the financial, make it a SaaS play, or make it somewhere you've got a commercial, you're going to lead with a consumer facing, then do something that's going to go. That just complicated your financial, and all of these, they're all out there, they're all available. How do you bring that team together?
Well, that's a very interesting thing. And I mean, I think that different companies or different incubators or different VCs have different makeups and specialties, right? Ours is getting quickly into clinicals, understanding and reducing the physiological and clinical risk before we go out and raise a lot of money to build a device. That's not what everybody does, and there are certainly different ways to do it. We tend to work on projects where the technical risk is high, but the clinical and regulatory risk is higher. So Ardian, Axon, eValve, all these different things that we worked on in the past are projects that require our type of approach. However, there are many different types of approach where you have more of a technical risk that, honestly, some incubators will do better than us. We tend to be generalists and try and be able to answer the big questions and wait till the Series A company to have, people that are really specialized. So, as you said, one of the big problems is, let's say you're going to develop a therapy. Now, there's usually more than one way to do the therapy, or you don't know whether, neuromod or whether a mechanical solution or whether something else is going to help. And when you don't want to hire people into a company and commit to them to a job when you don't know that you're doing the right thing, because if you then end up switching, a year in, what are you going to do? Can your whole engineering team and bring on? It's not only disruptive, but it's also very cost inefficient.
Howard, it sounds like you're telling me that these technical founders, they have to de-risk their shiny object. They fall in love with it, and then they think about that, and they everything gets next down. They just stop seeing other options.
It really is difficult sometimes to say what you just said to those founders, because they have a widget that they built, and it really works well, and it could be an amazing device. The problem is somebody else patented it 2 years ago, or there's no real clinical unmet need for it, because the physicians they talk to, it was a problem for them, but maybe it's not a problem for anybody else. They're the top of the food chain, and so it's just not. So these are, without having that sort of holistic picture in today's world, that comes from, and I think most people have moved that way, but we need more to get that message out more, maybe to some of the newer entrepreneurs, and save them some grief that we all experienced doing it early on.
Howard, Deerfield Catalyst is already in a great place to share that story. Tell it you've got an important move coming up. What's happening? What's on the slate for you guys?
Well, it's actually really interesting, and I mentioned it yesterday at the panel. One of the great things about being with Deerfield is that they have a lot of things in-house. They have a drug side, they have a health services side, they have a foundation, a not-for-profit, as well as the medtech side. And what we've been able to do is find that medtech, med devices originally used to be a sharper scalpel. Then they became mechanical devices. Then they became electromechanical devices. And I think what we're doing is, instead of this artificial or semi-artificial distinction between drugs and devices, we're finding that health tech is actually a combination of everything. So drug delivery devices, there are lots of drugs that sit on the shelf that cost a couple $100 million to develop, that have systemic toxicities, that if you could deliver them locally, not only will it cost you less because you use less drug, but you don't get the systemic toxicities. And that's where we start to see things. In the health services, right? How can we bring, where value-based care is now a big deal, how can we bring new therapies or new diagnostics into that health tech arena that allow them to more cost effectively deliver care, whether it's home-based, whether it's office-based, and what I can say is no one group can do everything. We need collaborations between different groups, and even within medtech, different specialties within medtech, to be able to, I think, get to the point where we're really reaching our stride or hitting our stride.
Well, I look forward to hearing more about the nearly true tales of innovation straight out of Deerfield, your new building in New York.
Oh, I love our new building. We need to take you up to the 12th floor. So it's a great building. It's called the Cure Building. The Cure Building's in downtown on the east side, and it's really great because it puts not only all of these different disciplines within it. The structure is just, it's amazing. You can have conferences there. You can have meetings there. There's plenty. We ourselves, I never thought we'd be able to do this. We have most of our engineering right now on the West Coast, because this is where you come to do engineering. But we're able to now, in about a month, be moving our engineering to the East Coast, and to be able to actually put it into this building. So we have, offices, labs, wet labs. We even have an OR sim space to be able to do stuff. But what I really like is going up to the cafeteria, because they have friggin' great food. So
That's a lot. You're in Manhattan, but you got to go to your.
We got to go to our cafeteria. They have chefs from Cordon Bleu that work there. So I have to say, it is you got to come.
Oh, so hold on. So Howard, are you telling me that your entrepreneurs don't eat ramen like everybody, like all the guys in Silicon Valley? You come to New York, you're going to have that kind of a chef.
Yeah, and so it's a different way to put on the COVID-10 without COVID, right? It's like if you eat in this building a lot, you're definitely going to put on the weight as evidence. So I would love you to come and visit. It would be and to take you there.
Oh, I'd love to come by and see you, Howard. Thank you so much for coming by. and sharing time with me during LSI 2022.
It's a pleasure, and this conference is just an amazing conference. The people it puts together and the panels and all the presentations. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Howard Levin.